All right, welcome back, Redskin fans. Coming out with another video here. Pretty late coming out with this video. A couple things I want to talk about in this one. Things we got to get off the board here real quick. One of the things I wanted to talk about in this video is we're going to be discussing the free agency tracker so far, the way that things look, the way that they're shaping up. Not going to go into too much detail about it. I might have a couple comments here and there as far as the free agency situation has gone this last offseason. I mean, it is what it is. I'm not exactly happy with a lot of it, but some of it I am happy with. So we're just going to go right on into it. The first and foremost, the biggest free agency situation this offseason for the Washington Redskins has been the acquisition of our quarterback, Alex Smith. I'm just happy that the Kirk Cousins debacle is over, to tell you the truth. I mean, Alex Smith, I think what surprises me is a lot of people are expecting great things out of Alex Smith. I don't know if you're going to be getting great things out of Alex Smith. I can't remember exactly what it was that I said about him in my last video, but I think a lot of us may grow a little bit tired of Alex Smith's crap. Alex Smith is one of the most conservative quarterbacks in the league, and what he did in Kansas City is probably not necessarily what he's going to be doing in Washington. They had a lot of talent over there. They had a lot of protection around him. A lot of things that Alex Smith was privy to that he's not going to have in Washington. And when he gets into a situation where he's got a subpar team that he's playing around, he tends to get very, very conservative. And he's not going to take any chances, any risks. And I can't say that I blame him. He's been in the league this long, and there's a reason as to why. And it's not because he's a big risk taker out there. So I'm glad we have him. I'm glad we have a competent quarterback back there, somebody who knows a little bit about the system, somebody who's a good pro-style quarterback and can obviously win football games. But all in all, I'm just glad the Kirk Cousins situation is over. Wish him nothing but the best in Vancouver or in Minnesota. We acquired Paul Richardson from the Seattle Seahawks, 5 years, $40 million. We'll see. I like Paul Richardson. I think he's a great wide receiver. I think he had an extremely dynamic team that he was playing for in Seattle. I think he had an extremely dynamic quarterback that was throwing to him. He doesn't have those things now, but he is a great receiver, great hands. He's going to be a huge upgrade for us. We need somebody at that wide receiver spot, and I'm glad that we were able to check that box and fill that hole. Brian Quick, moving on, linebacker Zach Brown. Ended up re-signing him. I'm on the fence a little bit with Zach Brown. He played well. He played really, really well for us. One of the best defensive players we had on the football field. I'm not upset with the deal. He earned it, and God bless him. And we could use him. That was a little bit rich than what I wanted to pay a middle linebacker, but he's pretty much the defensive leader on this football team, and we're going to need him with all the defensive holes that we need to plug going into this next season, and some of the things that we need to get done on that side of the football. So he's going to be a big portion of that. We're going to pay him as such. Orlando Scandrick. I hear a lot of people complaining. I hear a lot of people talking about Orlando Scandrick, and let me tell you, you should be. God bless you all. I don't understand what it is with this organization's love for the scrappings of the Dallas Cowboys. I have no clue. I can tell you right now, Orlando Scandrick always played really, really well against the Washington Redskins. He was always the first. He was in charge of some of those turnovers that we got. A lot of the fumbles were caused by him. A lot of the fights were caused by him too. He's an extremely aggressive player. When he comes out to play Washington, he shows up for those games. It's some of the biggest games he'll play all year is against Washington. And I don't know what it is with... I don't... As a fan, it's hard to take a look at anybody wearing a Dallas Cowboy uniform. It's hard to look at them. They're an eyesore. They're disgusting to behold. But I can't imagine what it must be like to sit and watch them in your home, being your arena, your stadium, where you pay the land taxes and the energy bills and the salaries and all of the crap that goes to maintaining and keeping the lights on in your home and watching the Dallas Cowboys and all their ugly fans come storming in and taking it over. And then taking a look across the other side of the field and taking a looking at players that wear those awful uniforms and saying, I wish he could play for us. No. There's not a single person that's ever put on a Cowboy uniform that I've looked at and said, God, I wish he played for us. No. Never. There's never been a person. Not even Emmitt Smith. They could take that. They could take that crap and they could shove it where the sun doesn't shine. They got a lot of room up there. But Orlando Scandrick, I think he'd be a decent improvement for us. But honestly, for the amount of years he's been playing in the league, 2 years on $10 million, no, I would have paid a box of used hammers for the guy personally. Am I happy he's on the team? Not really. No. He's a wait and see kind of guy. We'll see what he's like. Dustin Hopkins, you're a kicker. Mason Foster, I'm glad to see Mason Foster's back, to be honest with you. I think he's got a lot of good football ahead of him. DeShazer Everett's coming back. We ended up signing him. That's good. I like to say he really, really stepped up for us this offseason. He's not an elite safety, but he's a great fill-in for us. Did a really good job when injuries were plaguing this defense. Some of the departures that ended up happening for us, obviously, Trent Murphy, Niles Paul, Kirk Cousins. We had a lot of individuals. As soon as they went up on the market, they were gobbled up. It was unfortunate that Trent went. I liked Trent. But all things being equal, I can understand as to why we let him go. The Niles Paul situation, he's ended up going to the Jaguars. It was unfortunate to see him go, but I understand it. If you're going to put all your horses behind Jordan Reed, then you're going to need some blocking tight ends. It was something we didn't necessarily have a whole lot of. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about is I think that needs to be talked about, especially on my channel. The replacement players getting their rings. It's funny because most of us that understand the Redskins topics and debates that happen within Redskin forums, this is something that has been debated for years. This is something that's been talked about for years as to whether you feel or don't feel that these individuals should receive Super Bowl rings or not. And then it's funny when a 30 for 30 comes out and it presents that very issue, that very question. And here we are not even 3 months later, and we're announcing that we're giving them Super Bowl rings. This could have been done a long time ago. This could have been taken care of a long time ago. And for an organization that loves nothing more than to wallow and showcase the fact of an era of football that has nothing to do with them, it has to do with previous coaches and previous owners and a regime that was a hell of a lot better than they are. They love toting those guys around during halftime and pregame shows. That this would have been one of the things on the docket. That getting these players together and announcing them with Super Bowl rings for that year would have been something that, I mean, it had to have shown up on an idea board and then been cast away. It's only when it shows up in the media limelight and it gets presented out on a national media scale that we're like, oh, yeah, well, we're going to be giving those guys Super Bowl rings. Sure, no problem. I mean, of course they deserve it. Well, they've always deserved it. I remember that year. I'm old enough to remember those games that were played by the replacement players. It was a phenomenal thing that they've done. To tell you the truth, I felt that team should have always received Super Bowl rings because, in my honest opinion, if the victories that you helped sow for your football team help move you to win a Super Bowl, then you should get a ring. I mean, there are people that had nothing, I don't want to say nothing, but had very little to do with the actions that took place on that football field during that season that got rings. Those guys definitely deserve them. And for the sacrifices that those guys have had to make, and that 30 for 30 went into just a little bit of some of the sacrifices that some of those guys made. There were some of them that paid even bigger sacrifices than that. There's some of those guys that aren't around anymore that were suffering from injuries that were sustained during those few games that they played. And you got to imagine a lot of those guys hadn't seen NFL football play at a pro level, uh, and when they did, a lot of them had sustained, injuries that are probably far beyond what a normal NFL football player would sustain. And these guys sustain injuries all the time. But imagine if you're pretty much a Division One talent that really doesn't have any hope in hell of moving up to the next level, and then all of a sudden, bam, you're thrown into a game. A couple of years later, some of these guys have been out of the game for a couple of years, and they were asked to come up and play. And then you come up, and all of a sudden, you're taking big league hits and big league shots. Especially for a Washington team that shows up on Monday night, and you're playing against the starting defensive, and offensive fronts for the Dallas Cowboys, and you're taking hits from the big boys, and you're not yet necessarily used to it. Those things will last you a lifetime, and some of those guys sustained some serious, serious injuries. And I think we only got just the very tip of the iceberg from that 30 for 30, as far as some of those the prices that were paid for that year. I think it's great these guys are getting Super Bowl rings. I think it's about time. And kudos to him. I think it's great. Now, one of the other things I wanted to talk about that I should have talked about in my free agency tracker, I wanted to talk about the Sua Cravens deal. The Sua Cravens deal, we ended up trading Sua Cravens to the Denver Broncos. I kind of saw this coming. Some of us saw this coming, even though we had a general manager, and even though actually it was a head coach that came out and said, no, we're not trading him. He's a Redskin. He's going to stay on the football team. I'm thinking to myself, come on. What? There's not a whole lot that I buy from this organization. I said it in a couple videos in the past that I don't believe anything that this football team tells me anymore. I don't believe anything. As far as I'm concerned, they're all bold-faced liars. And the higher you get up in the chain of command, the bigger bold-faced liar you become. And the head coaching spot that you're in right now, Jay Gruden, you're pretty much at the bottom level ranks of a bold-faced liar to me. So it's not a whole lot that these guys mentioned in the offseason that I really take seriously. I just expect them to be lying to me. I don't understand why you'd want to keep a Sua Cravens on this team after the drama that had ensued after last season. And I think they pretty much had it in their head that they're going to get rid of him then. So they were just looking for a good opportunity to do so and get a good deal out of him. And it looks like, honestly, I'm not upset with the deal, to be honest with you. We ended up swapping 4th and 5ths. So for those of you who don't know necessarily the details of the trade, we gave up our 4th round pick, which was at 113, and ended up getting Denver's 4th round pick at 109. So we moved up a couple spots in the 4th round from 113 up to 109. So we moved up a couple spots in the 4th. We moved up a couple spots in the 5th. So we just swapped places with the Denver Broncos, and then we got an additional 5th round pick for this year as well. And then there is a conditional pick for 2020. We do have we do swap spots. We do get an additional 5th and then a conditional 2020. I don't know what the terms of those conditions are as far as the 2020 thing goes, but I don't mind it. I'll take it. I'll move up a couple spots. I like the 4th and the 5th round anyways. I like those rounds as far as the draft is concerned. So I'll take that. Hopefully we get that conditional 2020 as well. Okay, now for the last segment of the show that I want to hit on. I'm going to announce the live stream event that I'm going to try and attempt to pull off. That's going to happen in another week. So that's going to happen. I'm shooting for April 6th, which is a Friday. I'm going to be shooting for about 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. So a couple hours ahead on Eastern Standard Time. That is pretty much when I will be live. I'm going to be covering my thoughts and opinions on the draft. Now, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know now the terms and conditions of this video. And there are terms and conditions. I am not terribly adept to a lot of the talent that a lot of you guys have ranked in your boards as far as 1st round, 2nd round, 3rd round talent for every single position. I'm going to tell you right now, with the studying that I have done, I went in specifically looking for a defensive tackle position. So I went through and looked at all the defensive tackles, a majority of the defensive tackles from probably every conference, taking a look at conference players, taking a look at conference talent. And in my search for a defensive lineman, I'm looking specifically for a nose tackle. A nose tackle to play that center nose tackle A gap position. And when you're looking for individuals like that, a majority of these defenses that you're watching, a majority of them are playing in a 4-3 defense. And I end up watching those players too. I'm not looking specifically for just that one position. I am ultimately looking for defensive linemen. So I end up watching a lot of really good defensive players no matter what formation that they run. It does happen to affect how I scale people. There are people who I don't necessarily scale so high because they're not exactly what I'm looking for. Case in point, Deron Payne right now is ranked really, really high on the draft board. He's ranked really low in mine. I don't have Deron Payne. I have Deron Payne listed as a first-round talent, but I would not take him 13th overall because I'm looking for a nose tackle. I want a first-round draft selection nose tackle. And there's one that I think would really, really fit well in our scheme, and he's fit into most of your guys' schemes. And I've watched probably 3 or 4 of his games, and still feel that he should be ranked really, really high. But Deron Payne is not a guy that I would put in that position. Now, is he a first-round talent at 13 for defensive lineman? Absolutely. He's just not a nose tackle. He's a 4-3 defensive lineman, and he plays around a lot of talent. That's just one individual that I've scouted. I've scouted a lot of these guys. And in scouting a lot of those guys, you happen to look at other positions as well, other linebackers, safeties, corners, when you're watching these guys, because a lot of times when you're watching talent, some of these guys don't play every single down. Some of these guys are rotational, situational pieces. So when they're not playing, you're looking at other players. So when you're watching the awesome defensive front that the Georgia Bulldogs have to play, you're not looking just for the linebacker spot or the defensive lineman spot. There's a lot of players on that defensive front that the Bulldogs have that you want to watch. So I do have a lot of knowledge as far as some of the other defensive players are concerned, some of the big heavier hitters. But when it comes to defensive linemen, that is where the breadth of my analysis has come from. So when we show up for this live stream, you guys may want to feel compelled to start throwing quarterbacks at me. You may want to feel compelled to start throwing wide receivers at me. I'm not going to answer those questions because I have no clue. I'm not going to offer an opinion if I don't feel that I have enough homework that I've done on those individuals. There's a couple wide receivers and quarterbacks that I've looked at, but only in the pursuits of watching game tape on defensive linemen. So if by chance I happen to know a little bit of knowledge, when it comes to watching Penn State's quarterback play, and I think that he may be very, very good, it's only because Penn State had a defensive lineman that I was eyeing. And I happen to watch their offense play and see their quarterback play. So take that with a grain of salt. Understand that when it comes to this live stream, I will be addressing defensive linemen. I will be addressing a little bit of knowledge in the linebacker field, defensive ends, a little bit of corner, safety, and that will take up a majority of my time. If you guys have defensive line questions or people that you feel are going to be good or people that you want my opinion on, I will probably have notes on them. I've probably already seen them play. So that is going to be the idea for the April 6th live stream. It's going to take place at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube. So that's going to do it for me, guys. That's just a couple of the topics that I wanted to hit. For those of you who haven't noticed, I've been under the weather lately. I'm still under the weather. I'm stuffed up. I'm going to go to bed, see if I can get better. Anyways, we'll catch you guys next time, and stay easy out there. We'll catch you guys later.